Okay, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon if you're in Europe, and welcome. My name is Damian. I am the co-founder of Scale, and this is a pre-Scale UK webinar. We have our friends at Key Data here joining us. They're going to talk about market trends across the UK this year and looking beyond. So I have our friends Sally Henry and James Weatherby, both from Key Data. Guys, do you want to introduce yourself and just give us a little bit of info about you guys and Key Data?
Oh, of course. Thank you, Damian. Thanks, Lou. So I'm Sally, Vice President of Business Development for Key Data. I've been in the industry forever, 25 years, I'm very old. But Key Data, we work with property management companies all over the world. And in the UK, we work with over 2,000. And what we do, we take daily reservation data, which we aggregate and anomalize to allow you to see not only your own performance, but also how the rest of the market is performing. So we're going to share some trends with you today. And also James is going to share some of the power of the dashboard to help you try and navigate through the current environment of short-term rentals. So delighted to be here. James.
Thank you. James, want a quick word?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Sally, you've just given a really good introduction for me as well. So I don't feel like I have a whole lot more to say other than I'm James. I've been at Key Data for almost 3 years now. Prior to that, I worked for a PMS in the industry for about 7 years. So I feel like I've been in the industry for what also feels like a long time. As Sally mentioned there, she's going to present some data. I'm going to look at show you the actual dashboard for Key Data there too. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully seeing all of you at Scale Manchester soon.
Super. Thanks so much, guys. Yeah, the Key Data team will be in town in Manchester on the 12th and 13th of November. Hopefully you're going to get to join us and meet them. They're the nicest guys in and out of the conference. Okay, I'm going to pass on to Sally now to present some slides. Going to focus on the market trends in the UK, all of that data, good stuff. So Sally, I'll pass over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, and we will be at the show and delighted to chat to you about your own specific data needs as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to help set the scene. We're asked all the time is what's the market doing, because it feels like it's getting tougher. So we're going to share some insights, then we're going to hopefully share some insights as to how to try and help you navigate through. So we're going to look at some of the main KPIs, and I'm going to defunk some of the jargon, like we don't want to get too bogged down in jargon, but we're going to look at like the rates and the occupancy. They go hand in hand. We're going to look at like the length of stay and the booking windows, because this is what we're seeing is causing real pain in the industry. We're going to have a look at channels as well, peaking, and then we're going to pass over to James and he can show you some of this in live. We're happy to share all these slides afterwards as well. As Damien and Lou just said, these will get circulated. You can take these and share them around your peers at will afterwards. So just a quick understanding about where we get our data from, because a lot of people do and say, oh, I've heard about data, but where do we get it from? So we're integrated with property management systems and large proprietary property managers, and we take daily reservation data. And why that's important means we can really understand exactly what's been booked. We know if it's a guest booking or an aim of stay. We understand the channel it's been booked. We understand the feeder markets. So we can tell an awful lot more about some of these behaviors that we're seeing in the industry at the moment and share them so that you can see how you fit in with your portfolio and how you can try and take some learnings. So we call our direct data part the single source of truth, because it is from a reservation system. There are no scraping assumptions. And we always urge you to say, if you're going to make financial decisions using data for your company, use direct data. We also have our scrape data, which is effectively daily scraping of Airbnb and Vrbo. And this is brilliant to give you a breadth of the industry and to understand some supply trends and to give you that wider feeling. It's also the eyes to the industry for a lot of owners and guests. It's where they go to book or go to look themselves. So when we're scraping, we scrape about 8 million listings a day, around 50 million API calls. Looking at the UK, we've got about 450,000 properties that we scrape on Airbnb and Vrbo. And again, use this to understand the broader ecosystem. We flip to the direct data pot because that's where we're going to share all our insights from. We have over 2,000 property managers feeding into Key Data in the UK, representing about 85,000 properties. So really strong view of what we can see happening in the industry. As I say, all the data we're going to share with you today is from our directly integrated clients. So this is what I call a pacing slide. So I'm going to talk you through it because there's a few that are coming up. So the first metric we're looking at is guest paid occupancy. And why is this an important occupancy metric? It's because it's what you're getting paid for. It's where your guests are actually coming. So this is what you're going to be really reporting back. If you're, you know, a property manager with owners, this is where they're going to be wanting to understand. So where are you getting your revenue? So we can see on the left, there's a gold bar, which is where 2023 finished up at 38%. And you can see in 2024, it inched up. So we're seeing marginal growth in occupancy at just 39%. We ran the data at the end of September. So you can see the red again is 2024, and it was sat at 35%. And the dark blue line is this year. And we can see that, again, we're just inching that occupancy up a little. So we're not flying ahead, but we have got some occupancy, positive occupancy growth. And on the graph, you can see the dark blue line is this year, 2025. The red line is 2024, and the shaded area is where we finished up at the end of the year. So what you can see here, the difference in Easter between March and April, you can see that we come down. So in March, we were softer than we were last year, but then we pushed up stronger in April with that shift in Easter. The rest of it, you can see the whole second half of the year, we're really flat. We're pacing really similarly to where we were this time last year. Interestingly, because we're seeing this later market as well, as we headed into September, at the start of September, we were about 4 or 5 percentage points down. We managed to pick it back up. So if you're sat here now thinking it's towards the end of the year, is there any room to do anything? Absolutely, yes, there is. By the day, there is time to turn around your occupancy trends for your business. Just a quick look to see how this differs in different geographies, different locations. So if it's green, we're seeing positive year-on-year occupancy growth. And if it's red, we're seeing negative occupancy pacing across the UK. So what you can see here, many regions are showing that negative occupancy, but we've got the Highlands, the Cotswolds, London, all performing like that positive, driving some of that averages up. We've seen the Cotswolds, London, and the Highlands, and Edinburgh and Northern Ireland, the 5 regions that are green, they've been green all year. They've been having this stronger occupancy growth all year, and the rest being pretty red, pretty negative that we're seeing. So again, different metrics, understanding what you're expecting for your particular area. If you've got a portfolio that is in one particular location or spans across different geographies, please understand the different environment for each geography. We then flip to rates. We can't just look at occupancy in isolation. We always have to look at rates as well. And effectively, we use a metric called ADR, or average daily rate. We sell as an industry in length of stay, but actually we need a metric that we can compare against other accommodation types, or it's hotels, glamping, or other property managers as well. And again, a little bit like the occupancy metric, we can see it's just inching up. So 23 to 24, we managed to push up rates, an average of £5 per night, and we're pacing around £4 per night stronger at the moment. And you can see how that blue line finishes on the chart, on the graph. We managed to push April Easter prices up, and we've held rates, if you like, as we head into Q4. In the summer, we can see July and August, it's pretty flat. We ended up where we were this time last year. Well, you can see that shaded area means that rates will come down the closer we get to departure. That's just a data fact that we can see. So where people are holding rates firmer now, and it's a strategy that we do advise you to look at because it's what's really driving the revenue right now. Understand that rates will finish up shorter than they are or less. So is there a way of balancing your rates and reducing them slightly now so they don't get as much pressure immediately before departure? So again, something to think through. And a little bit like we saw, we've got mostly green for occupancy gains across. So that keeping your rates a little higher is a discipline that we are seeing across the board. But Edinburgh is adjusting from last year, which was as it was coming out of the regulations when supply came down, they managed to push rates really high last year. So that's seeing a bit of a rate adjustment. But the rest, we are seeing positive rates. And you can see the ADRs, again, do differ by different regions across the board. We combine the two metrics, so occupancy and rates, and we come up with a fancy revenue term called RevPAR, revenue per available rental. I like to call it revenue because you take your occupancy and you multiply your rates and you come up with the combined metric. Because if your rates are really high and your occupancy is low, then you're not going to be getting as much revenue, and vice versa. So this RevPAR, or revenue metric, is really the one you're probably judged on for your business, for your property owners, or they're the ones that are going to be saying, how much money have you made me? And this is a metric that allows you to report on that. So it's like this balancing act between your occupancy and your rates. And again, you can see with those rates are pushing up, meaning that we do have positive RevPAR. So if you're sat there going, this feels difficult, it's hard. We are making more money. You are making more money with RevPAR than you were this time last year. We're seeing these positive trends, which is not what we're seeing across the rest of the world. So we are still seeing some big markets who are still under pressure that are seeing declines in RevPAR going into really the third year in a row. So again, you can see the first half of the year we're probably feeling a bit more buoyant, especially with those Easter gains. But you can see from August onwards, we're really seeing it flat, pretty much following the same patterns we saw last year. What I'd like to draw your attention to is the shape of that curve, like the, I say curve, it's like a peak. We have so much relying on our revenue sort of income in our peak summer months, like July and August. You can see how concentrated it is because we've got the higher rates and we've got the higher occupancy. So what we're always getting asked, the challenge is like, how can we widen this peak? How do we flatten it a little so there isn't as much reliance just on two of the key months of the year? So yes, make money while you can, but how can we push up some of these shoulder periods as well? And again, looking at it where we can see occupancy and rates balancing each other, Scottish Borders under pressure a little, Pembrokeshire looking a little flat. But really those rate gains are really outpacing some of those negative occupancies. So when we talk about being disciplined with your rates, that is what's helping you drive your revenue right now. So again, if you can keep your rate, a real handle on your rates, and we use the word rate agility, it's a late market, and do not discount too early. Make sure you understand what is around you while you're making those decisions. Now I get to length of stay. So the average length of stay is something that we're seeing come down pretty much everywhere. And you know, it came down 23 to 24, it came down just 0.1 of a day, and then in 24 to 25 we're pacing 0.2 days shorter. But if you look at that peak summer, if you look at that graph, you can see it's peak summer where we start to see these lengths of stay really contract, you know, by 0.4 of a day, by 0.3 of a week. So what that means is you're just going to have to sell more just to keep your occupancy the same. It just makes it a little harder. Understanding that you have the right pricing for those shorter length of stay, and understand that this is a market dynamic. This isn't people saying they don't like your property quite as much, or they don't like, you know, the properties in your portfolio. People are just choosing to stay less in some of the, you know, when they're booking their breaks. Understanding this as dynamic means you can have the conversation with your homeowners to make sure you are priced for that operationally they're set up to have additional cleaning and turnovers, to have a gap night strategy if people are searching for just a 1 or 2 night. You can price a gap night strategy, or you can price a 1 night at 3 nights or 4 nights. You don't have to offer it less. But if you want eyes and visibility to your properties, then this is where really we're seeing this market shift to those shorter durations come through. And you can see again that shaded area, guests who book earlier tend to stay longer, they tend to stay more and spend more. However, you can see that shaded area, it comes down, so the closer we get to departure, the shorter those durations become, because people are being a bit more spontaneous and going away for shorter length of time. And again, length of stay, all but Edinburgh, which is one of the shortest length of stays anyway, and the Highlands, we are seeing that contracting length of stay across the board. So someone like Cornwall's got one of the longest length of stay, that's contracting. So Devon's a longer one as well. So again, having that conversation, understanding what this impact will be for your business is really critical, because I don't think this isn't just a one-off phase. This is a trend we expect to see continue. And the last metric, really, that booking window, like how far away are people booking before they're making the booking, before they actually depart. And what we're seeing, we're getting shorter this year, so almost a week shorter. But what we're seeing is those booking early have booked early, and those booking late are booking later. So the average is still less, but we're seeing a very late market come in as well. So what we can see here through the summer particularly, it's 10, 11 days, almost a week and a half shorter. So if you have sat there and you've got an empty calendar, you're going to think, oh my God, how do I get the bookings? Do I need to reduce my prices? So it's this almost pressure cooker of a later market means that people panic, and then those rate pressures come down. And we'll add the OTAs on in a minute just to give it a further element of what everyone's facing at the moment. So those booking windows, they will differ depending on your property type. If you have a large property or a unique property, you're going to be able to command those earlier bookings and those higher length of stay and those higher ADRs. If you have a portfolio that's got more choice around it of similar 2-bed, 3-bed, etc., then this is where you're going to maybe find some bookers or some guests just hanging fire and waiting, because they know, they feel comfortable that they've got a lot of options to do. So the guest is becoming a little bit more discerning. They're becoming quite price sensitive, but they're still booking and they're still going. So how we can give you the tools to try and capture this demand is where we can really help you. And again, those booking windows, all but Norfolk and London, you can see. But again, the booking windows are quite different for different regions, different areas. Some are super short. So look at Edinburgh, you know, booking within 47 days versus, you know, Anglesey, it's 111 days. How you price different parts and what you're expecting for different parts of your portfolio is it's really important that you don't push everyone in one bucket, that you understand what your property type should, what you're expecting. So what I say is, don't be surprised by any of this, that anything that's happening in your business. Don't look back and say, I wish I'd noticed that people were looking for shorter or people were booking later. Don't be surprised. Your strategy is your strategy, but use data to help you understand what you should do for your company. And just very quickly, the impact of the later market. This is looking at the ADR and reservations and revenue for different metrics. So if anything, so the light green is any bookings made to arrive within 14 days. So within 2 weeks, what we can see is the ADR is the least, £122. And that accounts for 26% of reservations first 3 quarters of the year, but only 16% of revenue. And that's because the revenue is pressured when we get later. If we look at the other side, like that dark green at the bottom, the ADR is £203. And this is for bookings made 6 months out or more. So what we can see, it was only 15% of reservations, but 25% of revenue. So getting that correlation between that booking lead time and the ADR and what you have in the bank, it just helps you really think carefully about your strategy for how do you attract some of those bookers earlier to secure some of those high ADRs and length of stay. And just looking quickly, as we look into Q4, just very quickly, we're seeing slightly more positive occupancy compared to the first 3, so +2, we'll take a plus. Europe performing a little stronger, but you can see Scotland there really -4. So again, they're navigating some slightly different trends that we're seeing. They had a strong end to last year. Again, not all areas are quite equal. But we continue to see those rates hold firm. And again, that's what's really driving your revenue. So Europe pushing rates up a little higher than the UK, but we can see all but Wales. Wales are chasing their occupancy, their 6-month occupancy that they need to deliver. So again, a little bit more price sensitive in Wales. And then that RevPAR, positive occupancy, positive growth meter, actually +7. So if you're sat there going, how do we feel for Q4? Actually, we're sat in a pretty positive position compared to how we're pacing for last year. And then we look here at that average length of stay, it is still contracting. You can see Europe, it's contracting even more, -7%, but we are still seeing this pressure on all. Wales is pretty flat as they're chasing those occupancy percentages. It's out of anything, I think it's the one metric that I would be really leaning into to understand how it's going to impact on your business. And that booking window, again, say -5. So bookings are going to come in later. So there's a generalization across the board. You can see again, Europe even stronger. This is an even stronger trend. So it's something that we see across the board. And then the last segment before I hand you over to James is the channels. So the channels everyone's using, we are seeing bookings made by direct channels contract, and they are losing ground to the OTAs. Why does this matter? It depends on your own strategy. You do what's right for your business, but not all bookings coming in from the channels are equal, and it's not one's better than the other, they're just different. So the booking behaviors, so if you're using, for example, Airbnb and booking.com, you can see the average length of stay is shorter, 3.8, 3.6 versus the direct bookings versus Vrbo. Your average booking window is shorter, so 42, 45 days, and your ADR is different. So if you're heavily reliant on these channels, you're going to potentially perpetuate some of these behaviours that we're seeing for travellers coming through. They book later and they stay less. So again, you know, do you want to use your channels strategically? So it's about understanding what is coming down the line. I urge everyone to have as many levers to pull as possible in this such a late market, have the ability to tap in to different booking channels, but understand what impact this would have on your business. And we can see that year to date, we've lost 8% market share in all the direct channels, and it's gone spread between really Airbnb and booking. So again, if you think about that slide I showed earlier about the different travel behaviours that are made through these booking channels, then it's just something I think you need to be dialed in at to see what does this look like for your business. Again, key data can help you see that. These are averages, but again, are you optimized to make the right advantage for using all these channels? Have you got the right pricing at the right time to capture some of this demand? So it's been softer occupancy, but rates has held the revenue up, but we've not had the ability to skyrocket the rates to really make a difference. We're having to be really agile and super responsive. It's no longer set your rate at the start and hope for the best. It is watch what's going on around you, understand the supply around you, and make adjustments all the time, because the market is coming in so late. There is still an opportunity to tap into this late market. Just be aware that people are using all sorts of different search criteria, channels, tools to be able to find your properties. 24, like last summer, was riddled with distractions. I think we said that there was the Euros, there was the Olympics, there was the election, but it hasn't given us a smooth ride through this summer. There's always going to be external factors that are influencing. I think we're all holding our breath for the budget news next month for the UK. Like, it's not giving people lots of optimism to have lots of money in their, in their pockets necessarily. So be aware of all these factors that could be feeding into this hesitancy to confirm to book. And I'm going to say always use data to help you, but especially this year, it's getting tougher. It's still there. The market is still there. We have some positive headwinds, but how do you get your share? I'm going to hand you over to James, who will help you use Key Data Dashboard to get your share of the market. Thank you.
So thank you, Sally. What I'd like to do then is share with you then a bit more insight into Key Data, the dashboard itself. So what Sally's just shown you there has been some look backs and of the performance that we see for the UK market in different sections of it. Obviously, with the nature of those kind of reports, it's quite static. And when we look at Key Data Dashboard, what it allows you to do is really break that data down into daily views. So you can really just run whichever queries or ask whichever questions are important to you of your own data and of the market in order to find the insights that are really valuable for you. So I'll talk about how we do that with our customers and how we could potentially help you. What's really important, just to explain what Key Data Dashboard is, we connect with about, I think, 40 to 50 different PMS platforms. We have the list available on our website. You can see if that's available for you. What it means then is we get property level and reservation level detail in for your properties, and then we can then benchmark that against the market. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples, and I'll actually finish with a live demonstration of the platform. As Damian said early on, if you do have any questions, please ask away in the chat. I can address them towards the end, and we've got my contact details at the end as well if you're interested in learning more. So just to move on, just talking high level, first of all, about what it really does. I'd say there's a number of key areas. On the right-hand side, though, what's important to understand here is who uses Key Data. When we talk about, yourselves watching this or attending this call, is really from a property management perspective. That could be a variety of, if you're like in revenue management or business development. It's not just about helping you to understand what price to set. We're not a dynamic pricing tool. Instead, we can give you some very detailed analysis on the markets that can help to understand if you're going in the right direction, uncover some new opportunities, and really just to understand how you're performing as a business. We do allow, and we do have the ability to create custom dashboards. They can be really versatile when it comes to the leadership level, communicating with your owners, as well as helping out marketing and operations. So very flexible in terms of the way that you'll be using it. But I think I think the easiest way there is to just, first of all, just to highlight some key things when it comes to the data that we have. So as a reminder, and Sally spoke of this before, the data that you would have seen in the previous one is what we call direct data. We also have OTA data, public data or scrape data in our platform. And it's a really important distinction when we're presenting this, because we can leverage both in the dashboard. But I think from an educational point of view, it's important to help you to understand the value of different sets of data, because both have their strengths. So when we talk about, say, OTA data on the left-hand side, this will generally provide you with global coverage. So it will tell you everyone that's in a market. You'll often see things quoted in the newspaper, for instance, that there's hundreds of thousands of listings in London, for example. What that's looking at is, say, Airbnb data. The limitations with that will be, as it's just looking at what it sees on, say, Airbnb, it's limited to like assumptions based on how full a calendar is. So you'll see there statements around calendar occupancy. And the benefits of that is it means you get the entire view of the OTA market. The limitation is it can be based on assumptions, and it also includes private renters. So if someone's renting out the bedroom for a weekend, that data is being considered as well in the overall pot. Again, that can be very useful, and that might be information that is interesting for you, but it's just important to know what that data set means and refers to. In the middle here, you can see an example of, say, looking at Manchester. If you look at, say, OTA data, just an example month, for instance, you might see 54% calendar occupancy. What direct data can show you, and as Sally spoke to there, and as I'll show you in the dashboard, is you can really see what the breakdown of that is. So what it would mean in this example is that overall 54% is broken down between holds or blockouts, owner stays, as well as guest bookings. So again, it's just understanding the segmentation of it. So when we talk about direct data, and specifically our direct data, that today comes from around 13,000 different agencies, and it allows us to break down the data as you've seen there. It's based on daily reservation data, and it will be a smaller set in its very nature because it's from the professionally managed industry. But as a result of that, it means that when you look at this data, you're comparing to your direct competition in that respect. And just to give another example, you can see Cornwall next to it. Just to highlight, you might see bigger differences when it comes to different markets, particularly areas with high seasonality. The breakdown between guest bookings, owners, and holds might be a lot more pronounced than, say, in a city, for example. And again, it's important to understand the segmentation of that. I wanted to explain that because you're going to see some of that data mentioned, and it gives further context to what Sally's just presented there. But I'll move on then to the live demo. Let me make sure, jump into it in the screen. You can still see, can you see the dashboard? Okay, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, it's all good.
Good stuff, thank you. Okay, so this is the dashboard. This is key data. As I mentioned there, this is a demo account, okay? This connects to your PMS, and as we mentioned there, it's direct daily data that populates this dashboard based on your reservations. So any information that we're looking at here that's historical is based on reservations that have taken place. Anything that's forward-looking is based on reservations that are on the books. So obviously that information can change. The dashboard gives you those updates here. From a purely functional point of view, the way the dashboard can help you is it just makes it easier for you to understand your own data in more detail. So what we have here, all of these are reports based on your data in terms of being able just to query your data and understand different areas of performance. You can just cycle through the different areas here and then see, for instance, if you want to take a look at your cancellations, you can see how that's represented in the scorecard. But essentially what I'm looking at here is comparing my business to itself from this year to last year. So it really allows me to see high level, leadership level, is where are my greens and where are my reds and where might I need to dive into in further detail. All of this can be filtered, and it's a very important aspect there in terms of being able to really dive into that data, because we don't just have to look at this year versus last year. We could look at the next 30 days versus last year, and we could look at that in a daily view. But we also allow, when it comes to your properties and what you're looking at, is the ability to break down that data on a very regional level. So you can see you can go very granular based on wherever your properties may be. As well, you can filter that by the market. So if you want to specifically look at 2-bedroom houses, you can. If you just want to look at a unit level, you can. So essentially, this then becomes a snapshot of either your business, a group of properties, an area, a specific property, or even custom unit groups if you want to create a bespoke report for an owner, for example. There's very much internal looking. So I know Sally's just presented a lot there, which is looking at the market. So of course, what we allow you to do there is to take that data and then see how that's relevant for you in the market. And that's where we touch on talking about and communicating your value to an owner, helping your revenue management team, for instance, your business development team, because it allows you now, for instance, to see, if I look at, say, this area, I can now see how my company is doing against all of my competitors in the area. This is a yearly view. This is just looking at me versus the market. This is just looking at a specific KPI. But just as I said before, if I want to really segment this and say, show me how my 2-bedroom properties are performing in a very specific area against other 2-bedroom properties and what that looks like for the next 30 days, you can have a daily view of that data. So it just ensures and means that you know exactly where you're going against the market. And talking about the KPIs that I mentioned there before, we're looking at paid occupancy. So we know you're seeing my booking performance versus the market's booking performance, not just how full the calendar is, which again can be important depending upon different areas. Again, there's many different areas you can look into there. What's really important to note, and a lot of data on the screen, Sally's just gone through a lot of data, so I always want to thank everyone for their attention with this, but there's still more to come. But just as a reassurance, if you will, that we offer partner success support. So everyone that works with us doesn't just get put into here and get told to click away. We do offer support, onboarding, training, anything that you want there, because essentially we just want to make sure that you're able to ask the right questions of your data and of the market data as is relevant for you. So essentially, this is what data is, right? It's what are your questions? So as an overview, this is just one dashboard, okay, in here. And you can see we have templates up here, but you have the ability to make a whole other number of very different templates. Can be customized for you, can be locked for you, can be shared for your team. You can make it as wide open as you wish this to be. But furthermore, then just to give you an example of some different dashboards, this one allows you to see, for instance, unit reporting. So if you're managing a large inventory, it allows you to very easily track, say, how specific segments of your industry are doing. We do have this data for the relevant markets too, as well as seeing, for instance, how your portfolio is performing. So you can very easily understand what this looks like. If you want to look at a specific unit, measure your top 10, your bottom 10. And again, this can be very useful from a leadership point of view. As another example, and again, I'm not going to go through every single report and dashboard and show you how everything works, but just to give you an understanding, is looking at market data then. So Sally's gone through some quite wide data there, looking back at the market. But as an example, in one of my everything dashboards, I've got a section here based specifically off October half term. So I've got a report here, which is, everything's locked in place there. And what it means is that if I want to look at a specific market, I can see some really deep dive traveler trends when it comes to this market. So I can see, for instance, where most of the guests for the market comes from. So this isn't my data anymore. This isn't internal data. This is giving me an insight when it comes to what's happening in the market. Where are people coming from when they visit the southwest of England for October half term? How much are they spending? What percentage does that make up? What's the booking window? What's the length of stay? And again, just like before, we can really filter this down, change the date, change the area. We could look at larger properties, larger groups, for instance, traveling. We can really look into this in more detail. Fantastic bit of insight if it's from a marketing perspective that you want to understand some areas for opportunity there, how to cater to guests differently. And for instance, you can see this is, again, how different bedroom sizes are performing within that market, what the channel distribution looks like. Sally mentioned it on a slide. We have it here in the live view. Again, everything's filterable. You can even see, for instance, based in October half term, Southwest England, what the nightly stay looks like and how that's different in terms of market share. Most people are traveling for 7 nights. How the ADR is different than if you're traveling for 2 nights. So again, as an operator, you might look at your data and say, wow, most of my bookings are for 3 nights. I didn't even realize there was an opportunity here for 7 nights, for example. So it can just be insightful to help you to understand some areas there. And then I think as a final example, this is just an idea of a custom view that I've made. If I just want to have almost like a matrix style view of the market, I'm looking at Greater Manchester over the next 60 days. And it's just very high level, giving me a summary of how the market is performing across all of these different metrics. Because we have the integrations with the PMS, because we have the direct data, because we get the reservations, it means that we're able to see many different KPIs for a given market. And, we can really dive into detail more if we want. So as a summary, as a monologue, and thank you for listening with that, I'd just like to highlight a few things. The dashboard offers pre-made templates that give people access to their internal and market data. We offer partner success management to guide people through and help them ask better questions for the market, and then the ability for them to set up dashboards for them to really look at their own performance versus the market and understand, how they can best leverage data to improve their business. So many more things to look into. That's as high level summary as I can do. We're going to be at scale, and I think I'll hand it back over to Sally.
I'll take it from here, James. Thank you so much. That was great. Sally, thank you. So much there to unpack. A couple of takeaways from me. One, perhaps that it's not all as bad as it might seem in terms of there's a narrative, in the short-term rental industry in the UK that the market is plummeting. We're in trouble. Those figures seem to highlight that it's not necessarily all that bad, Sally, that we're at a stage when things are similar-ish to 2024.
Yeah, I think it feels harder because it's later. And I think that's what people struggle with. So when people are getting under pressure from their owners going, you've not filled my calendar yet, it's because it is coming later for some, large elements of the market. So it's about understanding these changing shifts and arming yourself with the information to have that conversation both internally and with your owners. It's a weird geopolitical place right now as well, right? So it's how do we factor that in? Consumers are just consuming our product differently, and we just need to be able to adjust to that.
A few of our sessions are going to highlight owner relations, and I think that's really vital in terms of keeping a good rapport and good relationship with our owners. Yeah. So I invite everyone who's coming to Manchester to go to the Key Data booth, chat with the guys, and I'm sure they can give you a little demo about what's going on in your local area. The direct, we clearly need to work on direct, and as you'll know, our second day is dedicated to direct bookings. We'll have a lot of strategy and education on that. One final thing on me, and if anyone has any questions, please do add them into our Q&A section. As an Irishman, I'm always drawn in a certain direction. And I noticed Northern Ireland is staggering growth for the last year. And despite booking windows and length of stay, what do you attribute that to, guys, if you can at all?
Yeah, I think it's come from a very low base, to be fair, as Northern Ireland. So that's where you've got to always be careful with your percentages because, if you see where they're getting to, they're not even yet fully up with some of the UK metrics that we see. So I think a developing market, but one that is playing catch up a little from the data perspective.
There is one question I see. Yeah, it is. From my understanding, Wheelhouse is using Key Data. But from what I've seen in the demo, Key Data provides a lot more breakdowns in depth. Would you be able to briefly explain the difference between the two?
Different industry vendors do use Key Data. A lot of it is our broad OTA data to get that breadth of the market. Obviously, when you're using the dashboard, you get access to the Key Data direct data, which allows you to see those 40 plus KPIs rather than just the broader view. We work closely with some of the revenue management systems because we don't change prices. So a lot will use Key Data, then they'll use a revenue management system to actually automate their price changes. And then they get back to Key Data to assess how's it work for them for the different portfolios. So we do work harmoniously with the revenue management systems. I think it's important to know that Key Data, we don't automate price changes if that's a function you want. Not everyone wants that. So we give people the visibility of those prices. But if you're using the Key Data dashboard, you will get much more granular direct data access to be able to underpin some of those decisions.
Great. Thank you, Sally. That's a great clarification on that distinction. I don't think we've got any other questions. I think we'll call it a day there. We've got obviously a lot more to come in Manchester next month. So Sally, James, thank you both so much for joining us. Really looking forward to catching up with you for the show and maybe even a cheeky beer afterwards.
Maybe.